This morning. You're going to need the handout. Does anybody not have the handout this morning? So we're going to jump right into that. This one right here, Herb. And look on page number 9, if you will. There's a story there. And to get us started, what I'd like for you to do is read the story. And then on the back side, on page 10, right at the top, there are, I think, 3 questions. So take a minute to answer the questions, and then we'll come back and talk about this together. So read the story on your own, answer the 3 questions, and then we'll talk about it together. 4 questions, I'm sorry.
What pages are we reading?
9, page 9.
Page 9, we're reading page 9. Why read?
And then there are 4 questions at the top of page 10. Give you about 1 more minute, and then we'll start talking. Okay, put the first question up on the slide that's on your page. Just give me some general class response. You think this story is true to life, or is it exaggerated? I didn't have to wait for an answer. Everybody's bobbing up. Everybody agreement about that? It's probably the reason that we do things like this, right? Because the story is true to life. Okay, so question number 2 is, do you think Jim was successful as a teacher? By the way, Jim is a made-up person, so I know your discipleship wants to be kind and generous. You can trash Jim thoroughly because he's fictional, okay? It'll be all right. Nobody's feelings are going to be hurt. So Do you think he was successful, yes or no? Nobody? Harsh crowd, wow. So I actually asked that question one time and got something I did not expect. I had a guy raise his hand and say, I think Jim was successful. And here was his argument. He said, our responsibilities as teachers is to teach the truth. Remember objective number 1 last night that we talked about? And Jim taught the truth. Is that premise true? Therefore, Jim was successful as a teacher.
The Pharisees taught the truth.
But do you see the point? So what's missing there, I think, is a broader understanding of our objective as teachers. If it is just to teach the truth, if all I care about is getting up and saying right things, Jim achieved that. But I don't think we would judge him successful as a teacher, which means there are some other things going on there that we're looking for, like the truth being instilled and students being inspired and all of that. Okay, so here's where you get to have some fun. Who's to blame for the failure of this class? And Herb is back there holding his mic, so if you'd like to weigh in.
I think both the teacher and the students are to blame.
Okay, so work on that a little bit. You're blaming both of them.
I think the teacher had material that was too dense, but also the students didn't seem to have any interest in studying on their own to have a better understanding of it.
All right, very good. You wanted in on this?
It was exactly the same thing. You know, we want to put the blame on the teacher because he's the one presenting the stuff, so it should always be entertaining or intriguing to your audience. But, you know, the fact is that lecturing is a valid teaching type. I mean, we go through college and we get lectured all the time. So it's an unheard of teaching material. So it is definitely on both sides.
So it's so interesting. I really tried to write this story one-sided. And I have never had an occasion where I didn't get exactly that response from the crowd. We are so reticent to blame one side or the other, aren't we? Do you want to get in on this? I'll get him, Herb. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe this is controversial. I don't know, but I think the shepherds here have an issue because I don't. Oh, not here. Sorry, no. I'm sorry.
I thought this was about to get really fun.
I mean, here as in the case study,
story.
not
the
here at the
made-up story. We'll emphasize that. We got you covered there. That's
Okay,
good.
great, fantastic. First of all, I thought you were going to say that guy raised his hand and said, "I'm Jim." Anyway, so it's like I am a real person. No, so what I was going to say is, I think maybe institutionalism just might not be necessarily the best topic choice for a high school class. I could be wrong about that. I'm sure there's different opinions on that. That just may not be something that high schoolers will feel is super relevant to them. So you'd really have to, especially as a teacher, make sure you're letting them know how relevant it is.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, I think another thing is, to the best of the elder's ability, is to know the teaching techniques and stuff of the teachers. And that is extremely hard as an elder.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, that's incumbent upon us. But to know Jim is very diligent and all this kind of stuff, you may want to think, well, maybe that would be a good, kind of like Brian was saying, maybe we could have him as an adult class or something like that. We're going to pick, John or something, because he's more high school oriented. But to be aware of the teacher and his style.
Yeah, there are always these things that seem like really good theory until put into practice, right? And then it looks different. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I feel much less PC about it. Leave it to me to be the unkind one. I think that as teachers, you need to go in with the expectation that they don't care. Because, I mean, a lot of times kids are brought here because their parents brought them here, not because they chose to come here. So it's on you to get them engaged and get them interested in what you're talking about.
So you're actually, you guys, yes, thank you, I agree. And we're jumping ahead to my next question. I'll throw it up there on the slide, and that is, where did Jim go wrong? But before we get to that, I want to say that I think it's really important to be willing to ask question 3. Why isn't this working? As opposed resorting to what I think is sort of the easy way out, and that is the blame game. And I think in too many churches, when classes don't work, this is what we end up doing. We play the blame game. The blame game has 2 opposing sides. On one side, you have the teacher, right? And on the other side, go ahead and say it, the students. Who's got the students back? Mom and dad. Where were they when I was growing up? My parents never had my back like that when I was growing up. If my Bible class teacher complained about me, I was guilty, end of story. But today, kids complain, mom and dad have kids back, and then maybe the teachers, since the elders put them in there, maybe they're gonna have the backing of the leadership, and so you have these 2 sides against each other. And the students are saying, Mr. Robinson is so boring, class is terrible, and mom and dad are griping about that. And on the other side, Jim is saying, well, if these were good parents and they were teaching their kids to be interested in spiritual things and they would study for class, I would have something like, right? So you hear the blame thing going on. What's wrong with the blame game? It doesn't fix anything. That's exactly right. Kids can be mad at the teacher. Teacher can be mad at the kids. Class still doesn't work. And the words that impact eternity don't get taught. Okay? So I actually agree with y'all when y'all were insistent on there's got to be blame on both sides. There's rarely problem on one side or the other. So I'm talking to teachers and not young people. If it's true that there's usually blame on both sides and a class isn't working, what do I need to do? I need to, let me ask a different way. I ask a bad question. Who do I need to look at? Yeah, that's exactly right. By the way, if I was teaching teenagers, I'd say the same thing. Your class isn't working. What are you bringing to it? And what are you doing to make it work? Because I can only change me. I'm the side of the equation that I can tweak. I will tell you just in the interest of transparency. So we started a new class this 1st of September. And my first class was terrible. I mean, the kids just were not engaged. I couldn't really get them drawn out and into the discussion. They just looked bored. And we were driving home. Heidi was sitting in this class with me, and we were talking about it. And I said, yeah, it was not good tonight. It was not a good class. And I thought about it for the next 3 days, and I came to the conclusion that the problem in the first class was me. I don't think I'd adequately prepared. I was teaching material that I taught before. We talked about this last night. I don't think I'd freshened it up for this group. And I had to think about me for the next class period. I got to tell you what, last Wednesday was awesome. It's a whole different class. Who changed? Yes, sir.
Excellent point, and that's what I try to do as well, and it is good to encourage us all as teachers to self-reflect. How am I doing? It is good to notice the students, but how am I doing as a teacher when I'm teaching? Am I really, am I engaging them and I'm doing what I need to do? The real thing I wanted to say was, so I agree with that, was the shepherds in this story, this is hypothetical now, so we get to,
we got that one covered.
They just blew it in so many ways. They didn't sit down and talk with the teacher and say, here's what we want. They apparently didn't know his teaching skills. They apparently weren't following up and monitoring, and we can be guilty of that here as well, but they weren't monitoring the high school, it was a high school class? I can't remember. So there's just, so the first people I would look to is the shepherds in this story. It was a monumental failure on the part of the shepherds.
Well, I mean, there's your point, that all participants and parties in this need to be looking at themselves. So let's work question 3 a little bit, because it's easy to sit around and have an ain't it bad conversation. We want to turn it into something useful. So where do you think he went wrong? What was Jim doing or not doing that contributed to the failure of the class? Megan, right?
Yeah.
She's got a microphone too.
Well, I think
Oh, I'm sorry.
he just didn't consider his audience. And it's like you said last night, you could teach the same material one quarter and turn around and teach the exact same material the next quarter to a different audience, and it has a completely different result.
Okay. Yeah, I buy that. I think that not knowing who you're talking to, though I have to admit, when I wrote the story, when I was finished, I thought, even as a 57-year-old man, I'm not sure I'd want to be in Jim's class. Just being honest about that, okay? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so there's this hot phrase in the world of education called progress monitoring, and it's just the idea of checking in with your students and trying to understand as you're going through a topic if they're understanding it. Jim should not have been surprised when the test came and they failed, because I've always been told as an educator, you should know the outcome of your test before they take it. So I think that's the thing, is if he was asking, even if he was asking questions that said that they didn't answer, it could have been that they didn't answer because they didn't want him to launch into another diatribe about, or whatever. He wasn't facilitating a safe learning space where they thought the material was interesting or relevant, or maybe they didn't feel like they had anything that they could contribute.
Okay, so I'm going to say yes, thank you, and not say anything else, because we're going to unpack everything you just said in a moment, okay? So let me punt on following up, because we're going to build right there on that place. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to ask specific questions.
Yes.
To get them engaged, instead of just saying, do you have any questions or comments? Especially for high schoolers.
So y'all have noticed that in Churches of Christ, asking in an adult class, would you like to make a comment or ask a question, is like code for don't talk now. Have y'all figured that out? Yeah. Yes, sir.
He had the wrong format. He was lecturing too much. Even if there were questions that the students had, I know I probably wouldn't have felt comfortable asking the question at the time, because I would feel like I'm just going to get too much of a wordy response. I'm not going to be able to understand it. And if I didn't agree with the response, I wouldn't feel capable of rebuttaling.
So lots and lots of folks in commenting on the story talk about his chosen style of presentation. I don't, tell me what your name is? Daniel. I don't disagree with Daniel's comment. I do think that we listen to lectures all the time. Like, I lecture at least once a week. I'm going to lecture 3 times tomorrow, okay? I will say, coming back to what you said, that one of the difference, for example, between a college class and a Bible class, boy, this is going to be so unkind. I'm sorry. I said I was sorry in advance. College professors don't necessarily have to care if you get it, right? I'm going to come here and impart the information, get it or don't. You're an adult, on you. And Bible class teachers are in a very different place than that, because we very much want these people to get the information. And so the dynamic is a little different between those two, but I don't disagree. Obviously, hopefully you're learning from lectures every week, because what is a sermon? One person's unbroken point of view, which, by the way, is why I think Bible class ought to be different. We do the lecture thing, and so why do we call this a sermon and something else a Bible class? Because it's supposed to offer something different. I'm going to let you have the last word.
Something that I think about is that he didn't seem to build a connection with the students. He didn't build a relationship to get to know them and understand how they think, and to adapt his teachings so that they would be able to get something out of it.
Yeah, so methods, this is going to be method day. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that, and particularly methods as they relate to an audience and fitting the need of the audience. So there are 2 things that I want to focus on that I think go into being effective teachers that we can draw from this story. What I'm really trying to do is lay the foundation for the next segment, where we dig into, okay, so what are the methods? I think before we can do that, we need to talk about what it is that we are trying to accomplish, or what does effective teaching look like. And in this story, I think there are 2 things to grab. Number 1, effective teaching begins with learning the information that I need to share with my students. So this is page 10 at the bottom in box number 1. Write that down. I need to learn the information that I want to share with my students. By the way, did Jim do a good job? We should all do as good. In this area, I think he is a positive example. In fact, a positive example in 2 ways. Number 1, and most obvious, he clearly learned the material he was supposed to teach in the class, right? His diligent study is an example for all of us to imitate. I cannot go in and teach the truth, which is objective number 1, unless I have carefully studied that material and I'm familiar with it. But there's something even more fundamental and profound underneath that. And that is Jim is a good Bible student. It isn't just what he does for this class. This guy has been studying his Bible, and so he brings to the occasion a storehouse of knowledge now that he is able to draw on and contribute to this specific topic he's going to teach. And so, like Jim, we all as teachers need to be sure that we are good Bible students, starting with just that general knowledge that we're working on all the time by sitting in classes and listening to sermons and reading books and doing our own Bible study. We need to have the spirit of the psalmist. Your word is my meditation all the day. It's a lamp to my feet, a light to my way. So we have that rich storehouse to draw from when the elders say, junior high next quarter, 3 months, here's the topic. We're not starting with a blank slate. Now, that's how we would like it to be. Do we get to start out that way? No, why not?
We start with essentially no knowledge.
Yeah, it's exactly right. First Bible class I caught was as a college student. I was 19 years old, dumb as a stump, man. I just didn't know anything. And here I am going in and teaching a junior high Bible class. Why am I doing that? Well, I will tell you that if you want to learn a lot, put yourself in a position where you're going to be a teacher. So if you are in that place where you think, oh, I'm not Jim, I don't know nearly what this guy does, well, good, because you're going to learn as you go through the process. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to discourage anyone with that, but I am trying to encourage us as teachers. One of the most important things we do over time is we build our knowledge of God's Word, and as we do, more and more able to teach class. And then secondly, let's talk a little bit about preparing for a specific class. What goes into that? If we were going to construct a list of what preparing for a class looks like, what kind of things do we have to do?
Read the text first.
What's in the Bible? How is this lesson? Maybe you've got a book and we're going to figure out what does this say about the Bible and are these texts being used correctly? I just think it is so very important. Even if some good brother wrote your lesson book, when he's plugged in verses, read those verses, read them in context, be sure he's using them accurately and appropriately, because even good brothers who write workbooks aren't always right in how they're using the text. So we want to be sure we're with them on that, and we agree with that. Good. What else?
It's a good idea to know where the class is heading, like whether that's through the end of the quarter, knowing what's up ahead so you can weave it all together, or what the previous class was, what the next, previous quarter, next quarter.
Yeah.
That way you're not just teaching some island of a topic.
Right. Oh, that's a great way to describe it, as an island. And even don't treat your individual lessons as an island. In other words, I'm going to start with lesson 1 in the workbook. I have no idea what lesson 12 is about, right? I would look at the quarter as a whole and how each piece fits into that whole. What other kind of detail things are involved in preparation? What do you think? Yep.
Knowing the expectations of your students. What am I going to expect them to do as far as, am I going to give them homework assignments? Are there going to be some tools I'm going to give them for retention?
I have to develop some expectations from them. Good. What else? You have other thoughts about that? How about going over the lesson sheet in advance?
Goes without saying.
I know it's the obvious stuff, right? And when I say that, I don't mean like in the car, honey, you need to drive. I got to look over this lesson I'm supposed to teach tonight. Okay? And that happens sometimes. I've been standing in the hallway by the door, and someone says, John is stuck in a wreck on the freeway. He is not going to be here. Someone's got to go teach junior high. That's why I don't stand by the doors anymore. You know? I try to stay away from that because you're going to get drafted and stuck in a class, right? I want to be able to look over that thing and prepare and go over it and learn that information well. So Jim is an example to us in the learning piece of this and all kind of stuff that needs to be done to get ready to teach the class. Now, let me give you a second thing where I don't think Jim is a good example. Write down the word, again, we're still on page 10, box 2, write down the word communicate. Once I know my material, I need to figure out what I'm going to do, what methods I will employ to communicate that material to this unique group I'm working with, okay? Let me say that again. Once I've learned my material, then I need to figure out what methods I will use to communicate that material to my class. Jim, a good example in that?
No.
It doesn't even appear that he thought about it. He seems to believe that if he collects this information and then gets up and says it, the class will have it. How many of you have raised teenage children? Raise your hand. Okay. So let me ask you, if you say it, does that mean they got it? Okay? I think it ought to be obvious too. My son would have had a clean room if that worked, okay? I don't know how many times I said it. No. Just because we say it does not mean that they got it. And so what Jim's failure does is he identifies for us a second critical step in the preparation. And several of you already touched on this. I'm just going to unpack that a little bit more now. The best teachers not only learn their material, but they think about who it is they're teaching and how I'm going to get this method or this message to stick with this unique audience. Now, think about the example of Jesus, because we cited him last night as a teacher that used lots and lots of different methods. For example, parables. Ponder for a minute why Jesus taught in parables. And I'm thinking beyond the obvious scriptural statement that parables served to kind of reveal and conceal. For those who were interested, they were drawn, seeking more, trying to get the answers. The apostles would come and say, hey, we didn't get that. Explain the story to us. I understand that. That's what's stated in Scripture. I don't think that's the only reason Jesus told stories. Can you think of other reasons he might have done that?
Well, even reading the story about Jim provoked my interest.
Why?
Because I could put myself in that person's place. It's
Okay.
relatable.
It was relatable to you, yes?
Well, I was going to say the same thing. It's just relatable to his audience.
Yeah, it helps you connect to the topic. Can you think of any other reasons? Yes, ma'am?
It's a way to retain it.
Why?
So first of all, when you can relate to something, that is helpful. But I mean, how many of us can at least paraphrase the parables? Imagine if we were there, then that gives you something to recite. I mean, and I know a lot of kids go home and are able to recall the Bible story to their parents, and then that fosters a conversation, and they're less likely to forget it.
Yeah, I bet if I asked some of the guys to rehearse the manual they read on how to start your new lawnmower, you probably couldn't tell me very much about that. But if I ask you about the last movie you saw and what it was about, you could probably tell me about that. Stories are sticky. They hang with us. In fact, if you think about it, probably most of the things we remember from Jesus' teaching are stories that he told. And so I do think that there were several reasons for the parables, but one of them is that the story tends to stick with us. So it was a way of getting the message to his audience in a format that would be memorable for them. And so what I recommend is making this second step an intentional part of your process. Don't just have this kind of in the back of your mind as you're preparing some notes for class. Get everything ready to teach. know what you want them to learn, but then go back and say, okay, but how am I going to get this across? And then remember when you're doing that it's going to be different for different audiences, right? I told you last night, I did some things in junior high that did not work with high school at all. In some cases, it's going to be a trial or error process. My wife and I are going to split up here in a few minutes. She's going to talk about those who work with younger children. I'm going to deal with older kids and adults. It will not be the same thing. Look at the rooms. The rooms don't even look alike, okay? Because the methods for communicating to a second grader are very different from the methods to communicate to a guy that just retired last week, right? It's different. We need to respect that when we're trying to figure out how to get the message to stick. So let me see if I can crystallize it. I'm on page 11 now. I want to crystallize this into really simple way, an implementation strategy. That's what I want to do.
You didn't fill in box number 3.
I know.
Okay.
Herb is really worried.
I am. Amen.
I'm just picking at him. I've been knowing Herb a long time. Okay, I get that. So 3 questions that will enable you to put this into practice. At least these work for me. So 3 questions to ask about every class. Number 1, you need to ask, what do I want my students to learn? Would you write that down? That's box number 1. What do I want my students to learn? Every class needs learning objectives. And I would really urge you as you're working on this to stay away from the generic and drive toward the specific. So for example, if you're teaching the book of 1 Corinthians and on Wednesday night you're up to chapter 13, I would not have a learning objective that said something like, I want my students to understand 1 Corinthians 13. Okay, yeah, but that's sort of just restating what a learning objective is. What do I want them to know about that chapter? And if I was teaching 1 Corinthians 13, I think I would probably say, first and foremost, I want them to understand the temporary nature of spiritual gifts, which is what 1 Corinthians 13 is about. It's not a love chapter. It's a spiritual gifts are temporary chapter, but it does talk about love. So I would probably want to say some things about that as a second thing, what love is really all about. You see, specific learning objectives, I would recommend no more than 2 or 3. If you've got like 3,000 words of learning objectives, that's too much, okay? 2 or 3 really simple things. Now you notice there are 2 boxes under number 1 because I think we need to ask this question on 2 different levels. This will touch on some things we just said. First of all, I think you need learning objectives for the whole class. And I don't mean the whole Wednesday night class. I mean the whole, are you on a quarter system? Yes. The whole quarter of classes. Same thing Sunday morning, Wednesday night? Yes. So as a teacher, you get 26 classes.
Well, minus singing.
Minus singings. 26-ish classes, okay? So when I finish the last of 26 classes, what do I want the kids to know? So my coworker and I right now, we split the high school class. He teaches on Sunday, I teach on Wednesday, and we are studying evidences with them. And as far as learning objectives go, we kind of have 2 big ideas that we're working in this class. First of all, it is vital for our young people today that their worldview is rock solid. That spiritual foundation is set. So one of the things we want our kids to know in this class is there are very good reasons for believing what you believe, okay? It's not just about what mom and dad told you. There's rock solid evidence for every part of your faith, and we're going to show you that in this class, okay? That's first learning objective. In fact, if we just get that done, I'm going to be happy. But we also know that kids are growing up in a day when they're going to get lots of assaults against that foundation. And we don't want them to be unaware about the tide that's coming. And so our second learning objective, kind of negative, is there are answers for the criticisms you will hear of this. So you will have pushback on the things you believe, and we're going to show you how you can answer those. So for that quarter, till the end of November, this is what my coworker and I are trying to do with our high school kids. Solid reasons for what you believe, and there are answers for the arguments against it. So that's the learning objective for that class. The second level we need to ask that question on is then every individual class, okay? So when I went into class, what's today, Saturday, 3 days ago, on Wednesday night, I had one piece of that broader objective. And so the question is, what do I want the kids to know tonight? And last Wednesday night, we were trying to firm up their belief that there is a God. And one of the pieces of that evidence is we live in an amazingly designed bubble in space that's perfectly conditioned to allow for human life. And so that's what we talked about on Wednesday. That was the learning objective. We wanted the kids to be convinced that the design of the world they live in is way too complex to have happened by some kind of a natural accident. It screams for some kind of intelligent designer behind it all. And so that was what we wanted them to learn on Wednesday, okay? So whole quarter, what do you want the kids to learn? Each individual class, what are the learning objectives for that class? Yes, ma'am.
One method that I would probably do if I was a teacher in that position, or I wish had happened when I was a kid, was if the teacher had said, let's play the devil's advocate. Try to convince me, like, what is something that someone would say to you that would make you, question what you believe in? This is actually getting them to say what their doubts are without being, afraid that they're going to get criticized for it.
Actually, you just took one of the things I'm going to share with the guys in the next segment when we're together. I'm going to talk about the devil's advocate method. Yeah, especially important with evidences, which actually will transition us to our second question. Before we do that, let me give you a helpful memory device for this first question. I want you to imagine, let's say you're teaching in room 6. I want you to imagine one of your shepherds standing there at the door as the bell rings for class to start, and you're walking in the door, and he says to you, what's the learning objective tonight? If you have to pause, you're not ready. You with me? That needs to be in your mind crystal clear. You need to be able to say, we're going to use the world to teach them there's a God. See? So get that set in your mind. Number one, what do I want the kids to learn? After that is set, and as a completely separate step, number two, what methods will I use to make this message stick? So write that down in box 2. What methods will I use to make this method stick? Now, this point just made, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Savannah, thank you. The point Savannah made is spot on. One of the challenges we have teaching evidence is to young people is they don't know why they need this. Especially if they're homeschooled and their circle is largely believers. They don't have any idea about this assault that's coming on their faith. And I'm not saying as parents we can't talk about that and prep them for it, but it is way different having dad say there are people out there called atheists and going toe-to-toe with an atheist with a PhD, right? You with me? So one of the struggles we have teaching our kids evidence is relevance. They just don't see why they need to talk about that. I believe in God. Nobody's ever going to change my mind about that. So that was our challenge. We really wanted to work on that with our kids. So we're using 3 methods to help us with that. Method number 1 is an additional text. In addition to the Bible, we're having our kids read the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. One of the great things about that book, it's filled with lots of great evidences. We want them to have it so they can hang on to it. But it also does a great job of presenting the arguments of unbelievers and introducing kids to that. But again, it's words on a page. The second thing we do a lot of in this class is we make use of YouTube videos. So you can actually get some really interesting videos on YouTube of atheists making arguments against belief. I'm going to tell you, the church family on Sunday morning when we come together, that it is one of the reasons that young believers are becoming atheists. It's because of material they can find and they listen to on YouTube.
So you play those in class?
We do. We play the atheists' videos in class. What's that? Well, what's fun is to play the video and just kind of stand there silently and say something like, well, what are y'all going to do with that? Right? There is one video out there of this 20-something guy who is making an abbreviated case for gay theology. And I have to tell you, he goes through every Bible passage and provides a very reasonable answer for why that passage does not condemn loving homosexual relationships. It is compelling. He is really good. He's really wrong. But I'm thinking the average, in fact, I used it in Bible class with parents just to kind of freak them out. I played the video and said, how many of your kids would be ready to answer this? So it's really great for us to put it out there. And then what's really cool is I show them the other videos of guys like William Lane Craig and Frank Turek who are actually on a stage debating atheists and making them look foolish. And Richard Dawkins is my favorite atheist. I just want him to keep talking because he says lots of dumb stuff and it's very useful. And we play that for the kids and let them see that. What's really great is Frank Turek goes on college campuses and he gets these college atheists who stand up and ask questions and then he just dismantles them. And I want our kids to see that. And so the videos become very, very useful to us.
Do you prefer monitors in the classroom or do you use a laptop or what's your?
We have television monitors. We stream to the monitors. Okay. You're going to do that. Heidi will do that in her segment. Yeah. Very, very helpful. The third method that we use to help with this class is we brought in 8 college students. So it was summertime, and I had some, previously when I taught this class, it was summertime, I had some leftover kids who were hanging around doing summer classes. And so I said, sit in the high school class this summer. Why would I do that? They'd been on the front lines fighting the struggle. In fact, I had this lady in my class who was doing PhD work in molecular biology. This lady went to the lab every day and put pacemakers in rats, okay? She was really cool. So when she talked about the design argument, it was like drinking from a fire hydrant. I mean, just information coming out everywhere. She was excited about it, and she got them excited about it. Really, really great conversation. But these were people who had been on the front lines of the battle and struggling with their professors. And so they set in and help our kids get a sense of when you go to the next level, here's what's coming, here's what you're going to be faced with. So those were our methods to help get this message communicated to the high school class for that quarter. I think this needs to be a completely separate step in the process. I know what I want them to learn, but now how am I going to make it stick? Does that make sense? All right, question number 3. When we're done, I need to ask, did they get it? And I think that's the most important question of all. When we get done, did they get it? I am not a huge fan of testing. I really, really just kind of prefer to go up to a group of teenagers after services and say something like, so what did you learn tonight? Tell me what you took away from class. Talk to me about that. And doing that pretty regularly to see if they're getting the message, to see if it's going to stick. Part of that involves developing a relationship with your teenagers. Sometimes I get calls from teachers who are struggling with their classes, and I always ask this question first when someone calls me about that. My first question is, okay, when was the last time the kids were at your house for pizza? So if you're going to teach the high school class or the junior high class, have all the kids over to your house the Sunday night before for pizza and sit around and listen to them. Let them talk about football or band or art or debate or whatever they're into school, or if they're in co-op, what's going on in co-op. If they're a big University of Florida fan, tell me how the Gators are doing this year. You know, talk to them, build some relationships with them, get to know them so that you can then go back and have those conversations. It's really hard to walk in cold and expect the kids to be warm, right? So that relationship building, I think, makes a huge, huge difference later when we're coming back and we're trying to figure out, is the message sticking? The other thing is, goes back to what we said at the beginning of all this, if it isn't sticking, don't blame the kids. Maybe they deserve some blame, fair enough, but don't blame the kids because I can't fix the kids, right? I can fix me. And so, okay, that method didn't work. And listen, I'm going to give the guys a whole list of methods I recommend that have worked and been successful for us. I could give a list 3 times that long of stuff we did that didn't work. This is a trial and error process, okay? Don't be afraid to fail. Do it, didn't work, that didn't get the message across, that wasn't real exciting for the class. I'm going to come in next week, I'm going to do it a little bit different and try something else. That makes sense? But we want to know, is it working for the kids? Okay? Now I'm going to pause and ask, at this point, does anyone have a question or a comment? You ruined my point. I was going to say, see, it's code for don't talk now.
Oh, that doesn't work with me.
Ah, very good. Come on, jump in.
Have you ever had a teenage class where the teenagers didn't get along? Like, I've been in a teenage class where we were like 13 and we just about had a fight in the middle of the class. And
Okay, so I have never had a class where the teenagers got along. So your junior high and high school kids, remember, I only work that end of the hall, so don't ask me about third graders. All I know is they make a lot of noise. Okay, I don't know about that end of the hall. But teenagers are drama. Did y'all raise them? It's drama all the time. And so what I really hate to see is when I have a guy and girl. I have a guy and girl in my class right now. They're dating each other. They're holding hands now in Bible class, and as soon as I see that, you know what I'm thinking? The breakup's coming. And when the breakup comes, it's going to be drama, right? So yes, I have had problems with kids not getting along with each other, kids not liking each other. My class right now is a menagerie. It's a whole different collection of kids. I've got homeschool kids and I've got co-op kids that I call faux school kids. And I'm sorry, that's a running joke with us. It's okay. Co-op is one of my favorite things, by the way. And then I've got public school kids, and I've got a wide different age range in the group there, and they're all just different. And some of them are very talkative, and some get irritated with the people that are talkative. And some of that you just kind of got to roll with as the teacher. My approach, I don't think I'm saying anything about discipline in a future session, so I'll say it here. My approach is to largely roll with stuff that's just kid stuff and to drop the hammer on disrespect stuff, okay? So we don't raise hands in my class. I don't care if the kids kind of talk each other. I'll just kind of say, whoa, 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 you first, and then you, because that's kids, that kind of way they do. A disrespectful behavior will get a stop from me. I do that periodically. And the great thing is my kids do. I tell them that. And so they know there are times to be heavy. And I think we have to do that. I don't know if that had anything to do with your question. I'm just kind of rambling on. Do you want to have a second chance at that? A follow-up? You ask about kids getting along.
I guess my question was, what do you do when your kids get in a fight? Like, would you take that as an after-church opportunity to get together? Like, okay, let's go have pizza, let's go talk this out, I mean, do you try to get involved in the kids after church, or do you just tell the parents, be like,
okay, so I do try to get involved with the kids on all kinds of level outside of that. And that's a hard question to answer, because I think sometimes with kid drama, thank you for saying that, because it reminded me of something else I wanted to say. We are too quick to get involved. They will work out their stuff. And in my experience, when it's just kids doing things that kids do and parents get involved, then it just becomes bad. And I think sometimes, you can't always do that. I do think there's a time where you kind of got to step in and settle stuff. But by and large, I try to let kids work out their troubles with each other rather than intervene, especially when it's your kids, because we're all completely objective about our own children, right? Let me tell you one more thing. When am I supposed to stop?
10:45.
Oh, okay. All right, one more quick thing. Look, Herb. Page 10. Third point.
Oh, nice.
He was. So I just want to say a quick word about parents, and then we'll pause before our next segment. That's part of Jim's story, right? Parents were unhappy, and that's usually how the process works, that they wind up getting into it when they're unhappy with something that's going on. I think it's important that as teachers, we remember that these children belong to their parents and not to us, and that the parents have the primary responsibility for the teaching of their children, not us. That's Ephesians 6:4. And parents are going to be the ones who are going to make sure the kids are prepared for class. That's why, to me, it's utterly senseless to fuss at a kid for not having his lesson ready. That's not a kid failure. That's a parent failure. And we're taking it out on the kid in distracting class. I don't think that's very constructive. And so I think it's helpful to think of this as a threefold relationship, as teachers, to see this as a threefold relationship into which we need to involve parents. And so a couple of ways to do that. One of the ways we involve parents is we send material home for the kids to prepare, right?
No.
Well, I do. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the parents plug in, sometimes they don't. The second thing you could do is actually talk to your parents, and I would encourage you to do that. I talked to a mom Wednesday night. Her son has been in crisis for a year now, and he is better. And I told her, I said, hey, he's doing great. He's back to his old self. I had to fuss at him tonight, which is good because it meant he was engaged, he was involved. And so conversations like that are useful. I have even called parent meetings at the beginning of the quarter. Said, son, you don't have Sunday night, right? No. So Sunday morning after services, but I'll say, I just need 5 minutes with all the junior high parents or 5 minutes with all the second or third grade parents, and just pull them aside and say, here's what's coming in the quarter, and here's what I want the kids to do, and I just want you to know we're on the same page. Hey, if there's a problem, give me a call. One church I worked with, we actually would do open house at the beginning of every quarter. So on Sunday night, we'd dismiss 20 minutes early, and the elders would say, go back in the classrooms. They're all set up for the next quarter. Teachers are all back there. Look around, see what's going on, see what the kids are going to be doing. I even give assignments sometimes. Like when I teach a dating class, I give assignments with every lesson for the teenagers to go talk to mom and dad about what happened when they were dating, so that parents get engaged in what we're studying. I think that's especially important when you get into more controversial subjects. You probably understand that parents have different levels of comfort with controversial subjects, so you don't want to blindside them about that. Last year, we taught our high school class the Song of Solomon. I was waiting for the laughter. And we taught the truth about the Song of Solomon, not that this is some kind of a figure for the church, which isn't true. I'm sorry if you believe that. It's God's book on sex. And so we taught our kids, our high school kids, God's book on sex. I can tell you that we made some teenagers blush. Chapter 7, one of my kids finally figured it out. Well, we're at chapter 7. He's like, wait a minute. He's climbing the palm tree, and what is that? Oh, no. And he buried his head, red, blushing, so embarrassed. I know, it was a great Bible class moment. I'll never forget it. But I have to tell you, before we did that, I went around to every parent privately and said, what do you think about doing this? You on board with this? And to the credit of our folks, I got an enthusiastic thumbs up from all of our parents. Yes, 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 we need that. We need that. Please, please do that. And so we made our parents aware. Here's what we're going to be doing. And so, especially if it's something controversial, pull in the parents, get them involved, but fundamentally see it as this threefold partnership. Me and their kid and that parent working together to help their kids learn what God's will is for them. So, can I answer any questions about that? Or would you like to add into what I've said? Yes, sir.
Mike.
When you have a class and you have a range of kids, I think you address this. You've got some that are maybe homeschooled.
Yes.
Some that are not, and then some that are outliers. And that's such a broad spectrum in one room when you're teaching a lesson.
Yeah. So really great question. Thank you for asking that. And my answer is poorly. I don't think the bigger challenge is that you have all these different forms of education. Okay, that's a problem in some churches, and it isn't where I am now. So that's not an issue for us. To me, the greater problem, let me do this at two levels, is the gaps in the spiritual knowledge. So some people know their Bible really, really well. Mom and Dad are doing a great job. And some people don't know it all and don't have much interest at all. But that, to me, is the biggest one. The gap between the kids who are super engaged and the kids who you can tell they were compelled to be there, right? So those are two different things. Did I make that clear? There's a knowledge gap, even with good kids. Some know their Bible, some don't know their Bible. And then there's this interest gap between those who are really plugged in and others who just, they're already gone. They're drifting on us. So question, what would be our propensity when you got really, really interested in engaged kids?
Propensity.
I'm sorry?
Focus on it.
I do. Kids who are interested in what I'm saying and excited about it and I had a guy stick around after class. And we did a follow-up on what we were talking about. And then that led to some other interest. And I said, I've got this biology book where they put this false evidence. He said, I'd love to see it. I said, it's in my office. Here's this great kid and I. We're looking through a biology book, looking at all the false information that's in it after class, right? Really easy to be engaged with a kid. Second question, who really needs me most?
The ones who don't want you.
Yeah, it's the kid that's unplugged and doesn't want to be there. And so my encouragement to you, thank you for asking that, would be pay attention to the outlier, the kid that's on the fringe. He's the one that needs it most. The other thing is that you're really going to have some challenges with the knowledge gap. I don't have a solution to that. It sort of relates to kids who come prepared and kids who don't. So my kids are doing supplemental reading in this other book, and so about 2/3 of them are actually reading it, which is encouraging. But that means 1/3 are walking to class as a totally blank slate. They don't have any idea what we're talking about that night. That's a challenge. And so you got to play a little bit of catch up while still feeding those who are there and primed and ready to go. So I would add that as a piece of my preparation. I gotta get everybody on the same page here at the beginning. Everybody's got to have the same sense of what we're talking about. And in the next segment, we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. I have mics floating around. That means feedback.
Just more of a comment, I think. Like, I just really am loving and picking up on that. Most of the subjects you've talked about aren't just going through, Romans, the book of Romans. Like, I mean, there's definitely a time and place for that, and that is definitely necessary. But I love talking about real stuff that the kids are going through and, like, just shaking it up here and there.
So thank you for inviting me to comment on something I feel strongly about, and that is how we settle on what we're going to study. Now, I'm at my end of the hall, right? Because y'all ask Heidi about that for the kids, but at my end of the hall, so if you're on a quarter system and you study the same thing on Sundays and Wednesdays, you get 16 topics with your high school kids, 12 with your junior high kids. 16 topics before they graduate and leave us.
Like 16.
Well, 4 years.
4 years, 4 quarters.
Okay, good.
I'm not good at math, but 4 times 4, I think, is 16. Yeah? Y'all nod if I'm right about that. Okay, good. So what do you want to cover with a teenager right before he leaves to go off to college?
Amen.
What do you want that to be? And so what I would suggest is arbitrary systems like, well, we've got to do 8 Old Testament books and 8 New Testament books. Why? Someone else's curriculum. Well, we're using this series and this is the next book in order. Why do we have to go in his order? He doesn't even know our kids. And so I think curriculum planning is vital in this. And so I think what we do with our high school class is we sit down and say, we got 16 quarters. What do we want to do? What do we want to do? Those last 16 quarters. Parents ought to get to weigh in on that. Kids should get to weigh in on that. Sometimes our kids come to us and say, we would really like to study. And if it's a good topic and you could say, yep, that's important for them, boom. Write your curriculum in sand. Be willing to alter it or change it to fit the needs of that crowd. But I could go on and on about this. But to me, curriculum planning is a vital part of that. I'm going to give you the last, you've got a mic, right? Okay, I'll give you the last word, and then I'm over time. I'll have to quit. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment about the disparity between the interest levels in classes. I think that especially when you're working with older kids, that could be an opportunity for them to kind of peer teach, obviously with you facilitating and the discussion. But I've taught some teenage girls before, and they were not interested, so I gave them a project. They had to research a character or a story or something and teach it to the class, and that really helped them kind of get more involved. And then the ones that were involved got to share with the others, and it just kind of helped them meet in the middle a little bit more.
So I'm so glad you said that because you're an example of the point we were making a minute ago about method and approach. If I got a kid and it's just not engaging, or a whole class, ask yourself, okay, what can I do different? Let's try a different route with this. Let's do something different. And maybe it won't work either. And maybe nothing will work. My little troubled child that's better, we tried for a year to work on him and got a big 0. There was some mom and dad stuff, Dad, that needed to happen that we couldn't do. But we keep trying, right? Looking for different methods and different approaches to see if we can make it work for that kid. So it's 10:48. We're going to take a break, right?
Yes. Do I need to follow up?